Steve Robertson is a local. I had to read this because there's more accolades that come with it. Normally I'm so familiar. Dr. Cleary is the former CEO for the NSRI, but there's a lot more other accomplishments. He's also the past chairman of the Atlantic Underwater Club, past president of the Western Province Underwater Union, past chairman of the South African National College of Underwater Instructors. Hello, Peter. Director of Underwater Africa, and a huge congratulations. He was recently the recipient of the International Marine Rescue Federation for Lifetime Service and Achievement. So, Dr. Steve Robertson.
Thanks, Paul. Do I need the mic? Okay. So, ironically, I stood here 30 years ago in this hall when Arthur Clayton was the city engineer in a public meeting to discuss the marine sewage outfall for Hart Bay. And of course, the meeting told Arthur that we shouldn't have a pipe, and we got a pipe. I'm just going to take you through a number of slides very quickly, just excuse the speed, but we don't have much time. But think about it, in the city we have or use 1 billion, say that again, almost 1 billion liters of water every day in the city, and all of it, not only the water that goes out the marine sewage outfalls, all of it goes into the ocean, some way or other, via an estuary, via a river, via marine sewage outfall. And there are laws in this country that are there for a good reason, to protect us as human beings and our health, and to protect the environment. And I think the unique perspective that Johan and I bring perhaps to a meeting like this is we've lived underwater. We don't only have a view of what's above water, we see what goes on underneath the water. There are a number of disclosures. I'm going to use the city's own reports in this presentation to highlight some of the issues. It's very interesting. All the information we're going to present tonight is actually in the city's reports, but they report things differently. It's interesting that there's a disclosure in these reports, or a disclaimer that they audit these reports before they're published. It's another word, I don't have to be polite for censorship. If you want to read water quality reports, these are all available on the city's website. And if you go to this latest report on the inland water quality, all of this water going to the sea, as I've said, you will see that every single river, estuary, or body of water in Cape Town is polluted. We have a serious problem with inland waters, and that all flows into the sea, and we therefore have a problem with the ocean. And to quote an international environmentalist, the ocean is large and resilient, but it's not too big to fail. What we are taking out of the sea, what we're putting into the sea, are actions that are undermining the most important thing the ocean delivers to humankind, our very existence. Art Matthews took the time to write a song about Hart Bay and the pollution, so I'd encourage you to go to YouTube and actually listen to his song. It's very, very interesting. So a brief history of Hart Bay. There's a newspaper clip there with a picture of Professor Rob Miller, who was in that hall that night when we opposed the pipe. So prior to 1993, Hart Bay was a regional services council area, and we were all on septic tanks. And it comes to mind that those septic tanks that existed then exist today. They're still there, they just were bypassed by reticulated sewage. So after that meeting, we were forced into reticulated sewage. And every resident in Hart Bay had to convert their septic tank into a reticulated connection. There was no IOI, and much of Hunberg didn't exist in those days. The density in Hart Bay didn't exist. There were many, many farms which have all been occupied now by dwellings. And the Hart Bay River was essentially clean. And in fact, I lived on the Hart Bay River at the weir, and I could drink the water at the weir. It's that clean. But as you go lower down the river, as the professor will show you, it's polluted. So this is from the reports, this is what a marine outfall pipe is supposed to do, and I've highlighted the words that it's safely disposed. There can be no safe disposal of raw sewage. It's raw sewage with all the biological and chemical contaminants into the sea. No negative aesthetic effects, and John Trescott's photo behind this slide clearly indicates the plume of sewage that rises up in Hart Bay. And if you're on one of the pleasure boats that goes out across the bay, you will pass over a horde of seagulls with a stench of sewage below you. If that's not poor aesthetic effect, then I don't know. Reduce deleterious ecological harm and human harm. And we know that there have been no epidemiological studies to this effect in Hart Bay, and no environmental studies that have demonstrated that there's no harm. It's also in the city's latest reports. These are licensed structures, and you would have heard recently about the National Minister suspending the volume components of the licenses for these pipes while they're on the field. So that's a visual representation of where the pipe runs. The Astor and Katsumara wrecks are very close to the second bend in that line, where recreational divers every weekend go to dive. This, just to emphasize, this is raw, untreated sewage. It's sieved to take out nappies and cloth and things like that, but everything else goes into the sea. And Caroline will show you a video later of what that looks like. The city's own modeling shows that the plume comes inshore, and it's interesting that on the other direction it goes is towards Seal Island, where all the tourists go every day. The presumption of safety is based on 5 things. It's based on modeling. So these were models, oceanographic models that were developed. And I'll show you a slide just now which shows you that the plume goes inshore in just about every season. It's based on dilution. Hart Bay is a stagnant system. It does not flush out. Only when the southeaster blows for 2 weeks continuously does the water get crystal clear clean where you can dive in the middle of the bay. It's based on Enterococcus count. There's no other pathogens measured, as Paul has indicated. They test once a month, so a 14% or 3% test rate, which really doesn't inspire me with terrible amount of confidence, and they take surface samples only. If you look in those reports, you'll see, you probably can't see on the slide, it's too detailed, but the E. coli counts at every single one of the testing stations has been higher at some period, and on this page, the counts of over 12,000 per 100 mil, which are way beyond the limits. Even the city's own water quality reports of coastal beaches, you'll see, just look at the red, and Hart Bay is one of those red bars. This is an indication of enterococci counts and the pollution in the ocean at these swim beaches. These are the models of the plumes which clearly show to you that sewage plume, particularly in the southwesterly, runs inshore and along the beach. And John will show you a slide later where you'll see the plume rising up on the inshore area near to the pump station, and that's because of water separation due to temperature differences and to salinity differences, and it tracking along the bottom of the ocean and then rising up. The professors will talk about chemicals of emerging concern and their significance in the environment. I'm not going to deal with that now. The toxic effects of the sewage plume have not been evaluated in the Hart Bay precinct or in the Hart Bay area. There have been no studies in this area to show what the toxic effects are. They note the biodiversity risks, the toxic risks of all the things in the sewage, but nothing's been done about it to monitor it. Even the conclusions in their own reports record 20,000 colony forming units per 100 mil in the inshore area and the swash area on the beach. That is incredibly high. So to say the water is clean is patently wrong. There are no recent studies, as I've repeated several times now. The language in this report is interesting. Data analyzed indicates a non-zero risk of effects on human health. It's never a language that I've ever used in a what the hell is non-zero? There's a health risk. That's what it says. But you can see how we twist the language to temper it. And there has been no epidemiological data to show what the health impacts have been of this sewage disposal. They don't follow their own recommendations in terms of these studies. None of these have been done. The recommendations although they monitor enterococci, none of the effects on the bottom biota or on human health have been studied. The Hart Bay River, of course, with the development, has added to the sewage load from the marine sewage outfall. And everybody knows the contamination. When I drive home in the mornings, there's a river of water running down the main road that flows out of a retention pond on the main road. That is contaminated with all sorts of things, not only enterococci. The point is that if you don't build the built environment in a certain way, if you don't structure the built environment properly with proper systems, proper sewage, proper water, proper housing, you won't solve this problem. And IY and Hanburg have been allowed to languish for 30 years without any proper development. You would have thought the first thing that we would have solved after 1994 was to do away with apartheid spatial development and structure the built environment in a proper way. We failed to do that, or the city has failed to do that. These are two personal observations just to illustrate to you. This is two sites, two quadrants, recent photographs that I've taken. I took a boatload of divers back to Buckover, which is within a kilometre of the Camps Bay marine sewage outfall. And on that quadrant were spiny starfish and sea urchins and nothing else. Previously there had been the noble coral and other coralline life that you see in the other picture, which is a picture from Vulcan Rock, which is 2 kilometers out to sea from Seal Island, which demonstrates the degradation that takes place that the city should have measured. But of course there's been no 30-year surveillance of the impacts of these marine sewage outfalls. And so we don't know. What we're counting is what's there today. What we're not seeing is what was there yesterday. So the point is, undoubtedly the water is dirty by the city's own accounts and their own reports. Enterococcus is just a signature. If there's enterococcus in the water, there's feces in the water. Whether you have a little or a lot, there's feces in the water. And to use Paul's analogy, none of us would drink a glass of liquid that was half sewage and half water. And that's what we're swimming in. It clearly has impact on humans. We just haven't bothered to measure what that impact is. There obviously will be and are economic impacts, tourism and all sorts of other things. Processing is the only solution. And we could go back to the septic tanks that we used to use. They still exist. Dig them up, put them in series with the sewage line, and maybe that will initially solve one stage of processing. It's taken 100 years. This history of marine sewage outfalls goes back 100 years. And every year, or every cycle, every 5-year political cycle, the city has not made a decision to put proper sewage processing in place. Just to show that I was young ones, we do have a serious problem.